announcements tonight, but we will have the roll call. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Campana?
Here.
Commissioner Frazier?
Here.
Commissioner Hill?
Here.
Commissioner Schlegel?
Here.
Commissioner Smith? Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds?
Here.
Mayor Stonehouse?
Here. Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds?
I move that we excuse Commissioner Jenna Smith as she's running late.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Hill? Any further comment?
No.
Comment? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Against, by no. Hearing none, motion passes 6-0. That brings us down to the approval of the agenda. And commissioners, what is your pleasure? Commissioner Campana?
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to add an item to the agenda, if I could. That item would be a discussion of pole signs in the DDA 3rd Street corridor.
Is there a second to that motion? Commissioner Reynolds?
Second.
Commissioner Campana, comments?
Later.
Later. Commissioner Reynolds?
I was just seconding his motion.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? By no. Hearing none, motion is, or the item is added as item 15. That brings us down then to the agenda as it stands. Commissioners, can I have a motion for acceptance of the agenda? Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds?
I move that the agenda be approved as amended.
Is there a second? Commissioner Frazier?
I approve amended.
Commissioner, rather Mayor Pro Tem, any further comments?
None.
Commissioner Frazier?
No comments.
Any other commissioner? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed by no? Hearing none, it passes 6-0. That brings us down to boards and committees. Item 1, appointments. Sandra Kivala, Presque Isle Park Advisory Committee for an unexpired term ending 04/01 of 22. Madeline Goodman, Arts and Culture Advisory Committee for an unexpired term ending 06/01 of 22. And Nathan Larsh, Traffic Parking and Advisory Committee for an unexpired term ending 05/30 of 22. Is there a motion, Commissioners? Commissioner Schlegel?
Make the motion to appoint Sandra Kivala, Madeline Goodman, and Nathan Larsh as stated.
Is there a second? Commissioner Frazier?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Nothing other than thank you for serving.
Commissioner Frazier?
Great to have the help.
Any other commissioners? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed by no? Hearing none, motion passes 6-0. That brings us to number 2, reappointments. That would be Jeremy Johnson to the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee for a term expiring 06/01 of 22.
Check it out.
And Jamie Weeder, Arts and Culture Advisory Committee for a term ending 06/01 of 22. Commissioners, may I have a motion? Commissioner Campana?
I'd like to move that we reappoint Jeremy Johnson and Jamie Weeder to the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, each for a term ending 6/1 of 22.
Is there a second? Commissioner Schlegel?
I'd second the motion.
Any further comments? Commissioner Campana?
Just glad to have them continue serving the city.
Commissioner Schlegel?
Same. Thank you.
Any other commissioner? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed by no? Hearing none, motion passes 6-0. This brings us to our first public comment period. Comments may not exceed 3 minutes per person. Please state your name and physical address when making public comments. Public comment is open.
My name is Dan Landers. I'm at 2808 Granite Point Drive. I'd like to address item number 15. As you know, the LDC just passed in February, the new LDC, and as you may know, this new code bans all freestanding signs, monument and pole signs on Washington Street to 7th and 3rd Street. First, I'm not here for Cook Sign Services, which I own, but I'm here for my customers, which 95% of them are business people. Now, you may know some of them. They're hardworking entrepreneurs. They spend large sums of money investing in Marquette. So I get upset when someone takes their property away or their means to make a living to pay their taxes, and they don't even tell them about it. So a long-standing tradition dating back to the early 1900s of using pole signs in this business district has been wiped out in a blink of an eye. It's not just a tradition, though, but it's property that's being taken away, valuing the thousands of dollars. And what is the reason for banning pole signs? Is it health, safety, or welfare? No. One reason we've been told is that this is what businesses want. Well, these petitions that I have say otherwise. The businesses I spoke to did not know about it, and they did not want to see this happen. Another reason I've been told is that pole signs are not pedestrian friendly. Yet, when you go around town, the DDA has more pole signs than any other business. And why? Because they work. The little blue pole signs you see around that direct you to walkways, they direct you to parking, they're very pedestrian friendly. So then the real reason I'm told is this. It's for aesthetics for a finite group of people. And what this means then is that the new LDC will take away a man or a woman's means for livelihood because a few people don't like the look of pole signs. They say they have alternatives, blade signs and awnings. So that works for the first block of Washington Street, but it doesn't work on most of 3rd Street or even the rest of Washington Street, especially when these businesses have setbacks. Even monument signs don't work for these businesses because of clear vision issues. So it's a one-size-fits-all mentality that doesn't work for Marquette's business community. So businesses even across the street or the next block over will be allowed pole signs. Even the Conservation Recreation District is allowed pole signs, whereas the area designated as a business area does not. So commissioners, it doesn't matter how we got here, it matters what gets done about it. So we're here to ask the City Commission to correct this injustice by telling the Planning Commission to rewrite the ordinance to allow pole signs in this district. Thank you.
Barry Polson and Mitch Irwin, we're here to answer any questions you might have on number 12 and number 13.
Isaac Roberts with GI Consultants, here to answer any questions on item number 11, Williams Park Athletic Courts and ADA Access Project. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Joe Havican. I'm at 131 East College. I'm representing the Marquette Tennis Association and would like time to reserve for item number 11. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sonia Stucco at 533 East Michigan Street. My business is at 900 North 3rd Street, and I'm here to talk about the item number 15, the pole signs. When my husband and I first bought Stucco's Pub and Grill, we were informed by several people that worked in the city of the trouble that the sign that the previous owner had. And it went all the way down to the ground, and I believe he even maybe even spent a night in jail over it. So they were very pleased when we took that part of the sign down and opened it up and made a nice new sign. Back then, we weren't able to afford a lot for the sign that we wanted. So now, going into this year, we wanted to have a nice new sign, actually making the overall footprint of the sign smaller. And we were very surprised to hear that we weren't able to make any adjustments to it. Even though it would be better and smaller, overall, we were shocked to hear that we couldn't do that. Our business sits back about 25 or more feet off of the sidewalk, so an awning sign is going to be very difficult for people driving to see our where we are located. Our brand, our logo is a recognizable, recognized in the community, and it's become a destination for tourists, and it's going to make it a lot harder for them to find our business. So I think it's going to really create a hardship for us not being able to put a nicer sign on our pole that has been there for decades and decades, long before I was born. And I just wanted to address that with you tonight. Thank you.
Margaret Brum, 404 East Magnetic Street. I'm here today to invite everyone here and everyone listening at home to come to the Peter White Public Library on Monday, June 17th from 1 to 5 p.m. There's going to be an event entitled Bicycles, Bicycles, Bicycles. There's going to be 2 rooms. In one room, there will be basically the coolest bicycles I could find or ask people to bring in and show off. So there should be more than enough cool bicycles to see. And in the other room at 2 p.m., I'll be giving I want to say a lecture, but that doesn't sound like fun. I'll be giving an informative talk with cool pictures about the history of the bicycle, which is actually more exciting than you would possibly imagine. And the reason for this presentation is I'm signed up to do 3 very technical presentations at the library this summer as part of their summer event program. And I realized I was out of practice. I hadn't done one in a long time. So this bicycle presentation is a chance for me to practice talking about bicycles. And I picked the topic because there's no town I know that's more bicycle friendly than Marquette. And there's no town I know that has more people that want to show off their cool bicycles. So again, Monday, June 17th, 2019, from 1 to 5 p.m. If you have a cool bicycle, come join us in the Heritage Room at Peter White Public Library. If you want to know about the history of the bicycle, come join me in the Shiras Room at 2 p.m. And I promise you, you will figure out some things you didn't know before, and it'll be fun. Thank you for your time.
Matt Ludenberger, 1406 Garfield Ave here in the city of Marquette. I don't have a lot of time tonight. I got to go run back to work. But I wanted to come up after last week's meeting, the closing comments kind of not threw me for a loop, but got me some concerns, so I figured I'd come and address them today. Since the Founders Landing group and the Founders Landing development and the hospital development were both done by a committee, individual committee, such as what you pointed out, Mr. Stonehouse, that you're going to follow that model. I'd like to suggest that following that model for Cliffs Dow will give a very, very narrow, project for it, project scope. And I go based on, Mr. Schlegel, what you say when we try to create not opposition, but a concern for a project that's being spoken about, like tonight, Founders Landing, you guys are doing what you do, but you're going to come down to this is a project that's been going on for so long. Well, I want to be on the first floor of this, and I want to suggest that for Cliffs Dow, we create as a city a similar park like we did for Matson, and we do it for the north side of park or town. Now, I suggested I do it personally because I wanted to be the 3rd developer, and you've got 2 developers already in private conversations. So if those 2 private developers might want to make a water park or an adventure center, ropes courses, 2 towers that we can go and look at the horizon and the lake to make, by the way, everything I'm going to rattle off is at least $10 an hour as revenue for the park and recreation department. I want to highlight that. This is not a personal profit thing. But here we go. I'm going to try to remember everything that people have been telling me for the last 3 weeks. A mini golf course, a par 3 golf course, driving range that you could shoot out into Lake Superior, a lazy river waterway that you can actually take a cruise through the water at 70 degrees. I went down to the lake, saw kite surfing, saw a bunch of people in the water. The only people I saw really hanging out in the water were under 10 years old, and they only stayed because their parents didn't pull them back in. Everybody above 10 years old, we are susceptible to hypothermia on the Great Lake. And if you say water is the thing that brings people here, I say we tap into that and we make everything from ice sculptures on the lake in the middle of winter to having a pavilion down there so we can have concerts to having the park, the water park. I was doing some research, and just quickly, I'll leave these with you, but basically, the size that we have around a football field at Marquette High School is about $1 million of straight water activities. And if that kind of footprint is only a fifth of what you've got for sale at Cliffstow, we as a city could make Cliffstow Water Park or Cliffstow Adventure Center a very profitable margin.
Frank Jeff Verito, 350 East Ridge, Marquette, to speak on item 12. These are my opinions. Our new stoplights have operated for most of a year. It's time they are synchronized. Smart lights are only as smart as the programmers. Right now, many of our smart lights are stupid. For example, Front Street at Washington and Spring Streets. If there's any delay along that 2-block stretch, we stop at both, whether headed north or south. Planners say it's hard to synchronize in both directions. One would be better than none. This is a matter for a so-called advocate in Lansing who seems to have vanished. Where is he? For now, let's tell our visitors to take Spring Street because that's the main route through town. We thank Mr. Campana and Stonehouse for wanting to expedite the clearing of that god-awful power plant site, a day many of us wonder if we'll live to see. Taking up to 5 years on the plant's lackadaisical schedule is too long, especially if left to their whim. If those spokesmen appreciated our situation, they'd have already begun planning for demolition. Ms. Smith's request for an update every 1 to 2 years is too infrequent. It should be cleared in 2 years. We need our next update soon, or they'll stall like the BLM did on Lighthouse Park, all while no one in authority advocates for us. Mr. Stonehouse and Campana's pleas to the company mean nothing unless we keep the heat on. After all, we were lied to on Parcel 2, plus they may be off this board by the time demolition begins. Current members have never assumed accountability for the lies of past members. We do thank Mr. Stonehouse for asking that the demolition date for the stacks be publicized so we can watch from a safe distance. I'll be there, not concerned with the spectacle so much as to see that egregious eyesore forever gone. Congratulations on seeing my vision through by doing zilch to protect our wooded shore south of Picnic Rocks. It's too far gone now to save the ambiance, like an electromagnetic pulse that we saw coming year after year after year. None of 7 cared throughout the decade of reminders as the erosion kept occurring. No members used that beach, so they cared less, oblivious to how sacred that area is to so many people. Also, none of 7 bothered to respond to my requests for an update on the Tombolo, or why that ugly fence at the northwest corner of Lighthouse Park wasn't removed as a first priority. For how many years was this board warned to take swifter action at Picnic Rocks? Most of us haven't been here that long, they'll say. Then how about Mr. Stonehouse? He's been here a long time, did nothing. He was likely doing unrelated work during public comment as he was through most of this one, never even heard. He's documented his opposing public comment, and his public performance precisely reflects that assertion. The irony is, he's our big harbor man, yet through his sheer negligence, he helped disgrace the second most valuable segment of our entire priceless shoreline.
Anyone else to address the commission? Hearing none, public comment is closed. That brings us to our first presentation, item number 3, which is the M-Bank Marquette Junior Wildcat Girls 19U Tier 3 Division Hockey Team 2019 Michigan Amateur Hockey Association State Champions. And I would give them all a round of applause as they come in, because they have done well. Let me describe exactly what they have done, because it is remarkable. And these are some comments written from the team, so it's going to be from their perspective. And of course, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. We are very honored. Our Marquette M-Bank girls U19 hockey team had a very successful season this past year with a final record of 31 wins and 7 losses and 1 tie. We played in the Traverse City Girls Cherryland Shootout, where we went 4-1 on our way to being crowned tournament champions. We participated in the Traverse City Girls High School Hockey Showcase, where we went 4-0 for the weekend. Played in the Rhinelander Wisconsin Girls High School Hockey Tournament, where we went 4-0 to become the tournament champions. We ended our season with a final tournament of the year at the Michigan Amateur Hockey Association Girls Tier 3 state tournament, where we went 5-0 to become this year's state champions. The young women standing here before you are exactly who you would want to represent our city, team, and family. Not only are they very talented hockey players, but they are truly incredible human beings with a fantastic future. Their success is built on the true Uper work ethic and strong family values. No one worked harder than these girls for the sake of their team. They always put the team before themselves, and it paid off certainly handsomely. They never quit and had to fight their way back in many games from being down early. They are a gritty and tough group of young women who happen to also be very intelligent. Most are honor roll, honor society, and graduating seniors this year who graduated with honors and distinction. These girls represent our future. Then we are in the very best of hands. Thank you again for having us, and thank you for what you have done. Coach here? Yes. Coach, on behalf of the city of Marquette, we have a certificate of achievement to present to the team as a whole, but also individual certificates for each team member. Thank you for what you've done with them, and thank each one of you for what you've done and how well you have represented the city of Marquette. And I look forward to seeing you sitting up at the big bench soon, right? One more Thank you again. Thank you. Our next presentation is by the Board of Zoning Appeals by Chair Bradley Newman. And Mr. Newman, you're going to have a tough act to follow.
I'll try to be as exhilarating as that. We'll see. Okay, so I'm with the Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm actually a member as of now. A couple of months ago, we nominated and elected Ms. Heather Dombrowski as our chair, but this report is for the year 2018, where I served as chairperson of the board. Here's our current membership. Actually, Mr. Fuller, his term has expired and his seat was filled by Ms. Wright. We actually have 3 members, you see with the 2 asterisks, that their terms have expired and the charter allows them to stay on until a new member has been replaced. So I was noticing, sitting in the audience as I came in, that there are still 3 appointments available for the board, and that was available on the screen as folks came in. If you're interested in the Zoning Board of Appeals, we will take you for sure. So we have a 7-member board plus 2 alternates. The board, of course, serves in a quasi-judicial role. We might hear an appeal from the Planning Commission, and we have a liaison member, Mr. Larson. Those alternates are there if Mr. Larson has to step down because of an appeal of a Planning Commission decision. Those alternates are there in the event that there's a conflict of interest on any other member serving on the board. And so we want to have a diverse group of folks that can hear a case with a clear set of minds to hear the facts. So in 2018, we had 12 meetings. We scheduled, 4 of those canceled, and those are the first Thursday of the month. We did not have any special meetings scheduled this year. Some absences, most of those are excused. And we did have some meetings where we had less than 7 members present. Still a quorum, we can carry our business out with less than 7 members. So with the city having the land development code, we as a city are required to have a zoning board of appeals. And the purpose of that board is to allow for some flexibility in an otherwise pretty rigid structure, like the regulation of land use. And we will hear requests to interpret the land development code. If there's any question about what a particular standard or a section of the ordinance means, it's the Zoning Board of Appeals that has the official authority to interpret that. We will hear appeals of decisions made by planning and zoning staff, and primarily we'll hear requests for dimensional variances from the standards in the land development code. Those would be things like deviations in the side yard setback, for instance, to construct a new structure. We do from time to time have the job of hearing and designating a Class A non-conforming use or structure. Sometimes we'll have properties that in order to get a mortgage from the bank, they might be a non-conforming structure, but the bank will require them to have this Class A designation, which does allow for some change of the structure, even though it might be a non-conforming structure given the current zoning ordinance. And we did have one of those cases here in 2018. As I said, most of our cases are requests for dimensional variances. And keep in mind, with the Land Development Code being adopted earlier in 2019, all of this data is for the previous year under the old zoning ordinance. And we fully expect that these numbers will change. It'll be interesting to see going forward. By and large, many of our variance requests in the past have been in portions of the city that had non-conforming lots. Given the previous zoning ordinance, a lot of the lots were, say, smaller than what the modern code required, but we've seen many of those areas of the city rezoned with the new land development code, or I should say at least the standards have changed within that zone, allowing for more additions or garages to be built without the need to come before us and request a variance. So we'll see how this might change going forward. Our guess is that we'll see less variance requests as time goes on. So the role of the ZBA is one where it's important for members to understand their roles and responsibilities, like many boards and commissions, but with the decisions that we make, if there's a party that's aggrieved by our decision, their next place for remedy is the circuit court. And so we think it's pretty important that our members do pursue educational opportunities, and so we have that as a goal for all of our members in the upcoming year. We also would like to see more folks interested in joining the ZBA. We are fully seated, but some members have had their terms expired. They're allowed to stay on until there's another interested individual to be appointed. So I welcome folks to apply for the ZBA. A couple of things that I'd be open to discussing with the board or for your consideration to talk to the planning and zoning staff about. We continue to ask for promotion of the land development code. Maybe that's in the way of mailings during utility bills, publication in the newspaper, or promotion here at City Hall about the need for permits on things, including small deck additions or fences. We do see folks after the fact, and that's not a reason for issuing a variance because they've already gone ahead and done something without that request. Be a whole lot easier, folks. We're fully aware of the need for permits and possibly a variance before going through with a construction project. So public awareness about the land development code is something that's continually needed. And then ideas for helping to fill vacancies on the board. Be happy to enter in some discussion with the board along those lines. One other thing I did want to mention, and Mr. Keefe maybe is familiar with this court case in late 2018, the Court of Appeals heard a case where the city of Detroit sued its own zoning board of appeals. And that was a case that the Court of Appeals published. And in that case, the ZBA granted a variance based on one of the reasons being economic hardship. And for 100 years, case law has said that's not a reason for granting a variance, the economic hardship of the property owner. And so this will be interesting to watch. As I said, it's a published Court of Appeals case, and we'll see how other court cases might interpret that. It does complicate the job of a zoning board of appeals. That's all I have for now. I'd welcome any questions the commission might have.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Schlegel.
Thanks, Brad. Spent a year and a half on the, I want to say BZA, but it's ZBA. When I was doing my term with the Planning Commission, and I really found it to be a very helpful and just educating experience to understand how the city of Marquette works and how it's related to the land development code and all of these things that have to be considered when you're either developing a piece of property or even making small changes to your existing home. So I'm glad you brought those things up, and I think it's important that people really do get at least a beginner's look at what the land development code does entail. And I think that I was really excited to see the revisions that were done, and I think you're right in assuming that you're going to see less appeals, so that's exciting. And I just think that the work that you guys do is very, it's in the shadows, but I really do appreciate the work that you do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Nothing? I'm being stonewalled here, but thank you very much for the great work that the BZA does. I mean, it is, I think it's a wonderful example of one of our citizen committees that really digs down, that really performs in an extraordinarily professional manner of trying to keep the city moving forward. And it is a key committee, and I can't emphasize that enough. It is really one that produces for the citizens. And I encourage folks in the audience that might want to be part of it to please think about it, because we do have, I think, 2 vacancies on the committee, 3 now. So there's an opportunity to join, hop aboard, and help keep the city of Marquette moving forward. Thank you very much for the presentation.
All right, thank you.
Item number 5 will be a presentation by the Planning Commission, and you're doing it.
I'm doing it. So
Excellent.
both the chair and vice chair were unavailable to make it tonight, and so I'm Michael Larson. I'm a what's that? Oh. So I've been a member of the Planning Commission for the last couple of years now, and so I was asked to step in and fill in for Aaron and Joy here today. So history. So prior to the Municipal Planning Act of 1931, municipal land development was varied and often uncoordinated, and so this act here allowed for the creation, the organization, powers, and the appointment of planning commissions, and specifically their duties in the regulation and subdivision of land. And since that time, the act has been revisited and replaced as the Michigan Planning Enabling Act of 2008, which is now the governing statute for the creation of planning commissions and local government adoption of plans and master plans and so on. Marquette's Planning Commission, or original planning board, was first started in 1947. And so the Planning Commission, as you know, we're appointed to make decisions and advise City Commission on land use and property development issues. We assure that we assure that new development is consistent with the city's master plan, the land development code, and other policies that help to advance the interests of the Marquette community. You know, among some of our responsibilities are the development and update of the community master plan, review of development proposals on private property. This ensures that we have conformance with the land development code. We review street reconstruction projects and other public improvement projects. And again, that is to ensure conformance with the community master plan. And finally, we make recommendations on zoning matters and the annual capital improvements plan program to the city of Marquette. And so kind of just as the Planning Commission, just as, you know, developers, you know, work to protect financial interests, neighborhoods, you know, work to maintain their quality of life, and, you know, the city desires public safety, assets, maintenance, and infrastructure improvements. You know, the planning commissioners have the job of weighing each of these interests that come before us within the constraints of the land development code and master plans to make sure that you know, there is conformance and we are moving forward together. We have 9 members on the Planning Commission. Currently, we have full membership. Our 2018 meeting summary, we had 23 meetings in 2018. You know, regular meetings, we had just over 2 hours this last year, which was an increase of 33% over 2017, largely due to land development code work sessions that we had during that year. During 2018, we had a number of proceedings. We had 16 proceedings in total for the year. The LDC, those include the LDC adoption, public hearing, site plan reviews, master plan, and zoning ordinance amendments, street reconstruction project recommendations. Some of the major accomplishments during 2018 include the master plan amendments, land development code adoption, and the updated zoning ordinance standards for short-term rentals and the residential units. So in discussion with the Planning Commission, we have a number of concerns that we are looking at for the following year, and a few requests that we will be noting on the coming pages here, specifically around the development and traffic and parking on Lakeshore Boulevard Scenic Corridor. We think a new study for the corridor is desirable. We have several land development code amendments that are going to be needed to be made. And the last item for adequate parking for staff at the new hospital campus, that seems to have at least begun a remedy already kind of in place, but we'd like to keep an eye on that. Goals and objectives for the following year include amending the land development code. Currently, we have a number of issues, as with any new code, we have a number of issues that have kind of come up and concerns that you know, may have been overlooked during that development. Currently, city staff is working to create amendments for those items, and we will be taking those up in our upcoming meetings, and we're sure that several amendments will be needed prior to the end of 2019. We'd also like to hold a joint work session on the Lakeshore Boulevard for long-range planning to identify, you know, priorities and strategies that would help to guide future development along this particularly important stretch of roadway here in Marquette. And we also have goals for staff implementation of bike routes planning. Continued on, we are seeing kind of a growing community need for public transportation, and we would like to conduct a joint work session to discuss the feasibility of this, as well as the possibility of a public transportation route. Land development code, we'd like to start looking at marijuana regulation, specifically to discuss zoning issues that are going to arise around those. So we would be looking to request that as well. So we have a couple of work sessions that we'd like to request with you, and we'll put those through the formal channels, you know, as we move forward here. But we think that the Planning Commission and the City Commission have some shared goals that, we like to get out ahead of and start discussing. So if you have any comments, we'd welcome them.
Commissioners, any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, first off, thanks for the presentation, Michael. I think that the issues that you want to have joint work sessions with the city commission are ones that are important. So I do believe that we probably need to do those. As you probably heard, as we added to our agenda, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot if you don't know or don't remember, but do you remember when you were going through the land development code, the pole sign situation, why that stuck around, why that went there? If you don't know the answer, that's okay, but I just feel like you're right here, so I can ask.
No worries. Certainly, when looking through the land development code and all the issues around signs, it's certainly we took a lot of time on it, and I think at this point in time, I would kind of ask Dave or somebody that we could come back to you and have a better answer for you than rather me kind of answering on the spot how those conversations went down.
That's just fine.
Any other commissioner? Commissioner Frazier.
Great presentation. You guys do great work. One thing I learned when I was down in Grand Rapids for a MML meeting was that I tried to get a word on how they do public transportation down there. And one thing I learned was they have a bus system like we've talked about many times here about trying to work with them, a bus system. They have a local bus system that runs around a certain part of town that's partially funded by their local college. And I brought that to the city's attention, stuff like that. Something we could look at, maybe you guys could look at talking about maybe working with some at NMU, because NMU has got a lot of students and they basically pay a fee or something like that. It comes out of their tuition or something, and it covers, 3 or 4 buses going around or something. It covers part of the cost, and the city covers the cost, just something they do in Grand Rapids. And then as far as marijuana laws, I thought it would take forever, but I learned at a meeting recently in Escanaba, it may come up in this month, probably may talk about more about, regulations and laws for that. So just keep your ears open.
Commissioner Hill.
I have a question. What does it mean, and you probably can't answer this, so this is also to the folks who can answer the question, but once a work session is requested, then what happens after that? Like, what is the process for this? Could someone address that in either now or later?
I would ask the city manager what the process would be.
Yeah, I can answer that. Normally, the request is made through my office. I then would probably discuss with the mayor about setting up a work session and gauge the appropriateness, first of all, and necessity, second of all. I'm not saying it isn't warranted in this case, but we have had varying requests for work sessions in the past. Some are appropriate, some aren't. But in this case, it would be something that we would try to schedule through my office.
And then the purpose of a work session, just for folks who might not be aware, is that's a place where, like these meetings where we're making decisions and we're making where formal votes are held and things are finalized. A work session is a place where people can talk about issues and have a chance to weigh in before decisions are made. So people sometimes wonder, how did that happen? Well, it starts at the work session. So come to the work session to have a start in that conversation. And then out of the work session, many different outcomes are possible. It's been my experience so far. So thanks for that opportunity to have an important community conversation. And my other question to the Planning Commission is, could you go back to that slide on the number of different kinds of cases? I had a question. The types of actions that you had? Yeah. So if you didn't have the land development code, like all the other stuff, that's going to happen every year? Or are these also things that come up once and wouldn't have happened again?
So a number of these items, such as community master plan amendments, do not necessarily happen every year. Same thing with zoning ordinance amendments. They will be brought up on an as-needed basis, is my understanding. Yearly, we will look at the capital improvements plan and recommendations. We'll also look at street reconstruction projects as they are brought before us on a yearly basis as well. Additionally, site plan review and conditional use permit requests. Those happen they can happen yearly and, more than multiple times yearly, but it depends on how many applicants for those that come about.
So looking forward to 2019 with the goals and objectives that you had, you don't anticipate, well, there's amending the land development code, and there will be it sounds like continue to be site plan review and conditional use permit requests, and then the street reconstruction projects, and capital improvement plans, but you don't anticipate seeing any other big planning, comprehensive planning, except maybe this Lakeshore Boulevard project. Is that fair to say?
Well, I don't know that that's a portion of it, but there's certainly, there's a number of amendments that are going to be made to the land development code, and I think that's going to be an ongoing process, given how new it is, and as people start to use the new code, we don't exactly know what issues may arise at that point in time, and so that's going to be an ongoing process, and kind of a bit of a living document, at least for now, in order to see what works for the community.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Schlegel.
Thanks, Michael. I'm a big fan of the Planning Commission and the process. A couple of takeaways here, and I'm really glad that you're kind of circling back and touching about them again. The master plan and the land development code, the LDC revision that was recently done, these were two massive undertakings that staff and the commission did, and I'm talking a few years. I spent 4.5 years doing master plan and then started a little bit on the LDC, and talk about painstaking process. But you guys really, the amount of work that goes into that was just astronomical, and I want to thank you guys for it. And the key element here that might be a good one to follow up on Commissioner Hill's comment is that instead of waiting 15 years to redo the master plan like had happened before, which should be done revised maybe every 5, is common practice, this is now a living document that the city is willing to go back and revisit as needed. And that's just awesome, because it's keeping us right up to snuff with all of our the changes. We're not dealing with 1979 paperwork anymore. Everything is current and up to date. So this is a very, very advantageous process that the city is undertaking on both the LDC and the master plan. So that will undoubtedly take up plenty of your time. and it's just a great thing to see, and I look forward to the work sessions with the commission. But to staff, Dave and Dennis and Andrea, thank you for your hard work, and the commission, keep up the solid work. Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Well, Mr. Larson, thank you very much for a great presentation. And as you know, and I know the commission knows, and I hope the people in the audience and our citizens are aware too, that the Planning Commission is an incredibly hard-working group we have. You can see the amount of hours they put in. You can see the effort that they've plowed through this year, and certainly will be plowing through additional material as the out years come. And all of this is key to the city operating smoothly and professionally. They are a very important part of what makes this city work. So thank you again for again giving us an update. That brings us down to item number 6, which is a public hearing for ordinance 679, which is a repeal of section 54.807 of the Land Development Code. Commissioners, reminding you, myself, that will require a roll call vote later. City Clerk, if you will please read the background.
Thank you, Mayor. Background. It was brought to the attention of the Community Development Director that the Land Development Code, Section 54.807, that provides standards for the replacement of trees in forested areas, has created an extreme burden on the development of property. The Land Development Code currently requires the planting of a replacement tree that has at least a 6-inch diameter when measured 54 inches above grade for every such similar tree that is removed for development. A specific example of the extreme burden would be the sale and future development of Heartwood Forest Land Parcel 12. The tree replacement cost for the proposed development is more than 5 times the cost of the land cost equal $203,000, and tree replacement equal $1.7 million. It is the belief of the Community Development Director that this would leave the city vulnerable to if the property owner were to mount a legal challenge on the basis of a taking of the property. In order to address this matter immediately, the City Commission is being asked to hold a public hearing and strike this section of the LDC. This public hearing was scheduled at the regular meeting on May 13th, 2019, to be held this evening. Fiscal effect, none by this action. Recommendation, after the public hearing, consider repealing Section 54.807 of the Land Development Code by adopting ordinance number 679. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
I declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to speak to this item, this is your opportunity.
Frank Giaverdo, these are my opinions. It's agreed that the cost of replacing trees with ones at least 6 inches in diameter when measured 54 inches above grade might burden the property owners with exorbitant costs. However, repealing the entire section isn't the answer. Developers who purchase property in Marquette must be made aware of this ordinance prior to purchasing the property. This is especially true when we've seen culprits use the step-by-step, hurdle-by-hurdle approach to finagle projects through, when they well knew what they were getting into ahead of time. This is why more times than not we've ended up with less than what was expected as detailed on public record. We need to keep an ordinance in effect for the replanting of trees. Maybe the 6-inch diameter rule can be reduced to 4 inches, which would greatly reduce the cost. There is such a thing as transplanting trees, not that this is cheap either. It could be looked into so long as the trees are already on the property. This would eliminate any purchase costs. If they've already destroyed the trees, a change from 6 to 4 inches seems reasonable. To allow a buyer to alter scenic property that's of a quality to be the main park in most municipalities without any reforestation is unacceptable. The trouble is, this board is for gung-ho development and gives in automatically to most every developer's whim, regardless of whether it's detrimental to our environment or our people. There's no mention in the supplement of this having been run by any other board. Instead of subjecting us to another rushed decision, this commission is urged to take the obviously prudent measure to run this by our planning commission. This is part of our land development code. They revised the code. They're the ones who want to recommend any change, not the developers.
Anyone else to address the commission on this item? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Commissioners, comments, pleasure? Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds?
I move to suspend the rules for discussion.
Is there a second? We need that. We have a second. All in favor, go ahead, discuss.
Okay. I think all right. The only reason I wanted to suspend the rules is I don't particularly have a problem with the recommendation to repeal the land development code, but I would like to, in a motion made by somebody, if it's even including myself, I would like this to include that it gets sent back to the Planning Commission for alternatives, and I don't think that's currently in there. I think if we repeal it, I don't want it to get lost and it not come back up if they have a better idea of something we could do in the future. So that's my only comment on it.
Any other commissioner comment? Commissioner Hill, I'm sorry.
Comment on this topic or additional?
It's wide open.
Okay. We have a chart here that shows impacted area sites are 1 acre, 6 acres, and 15 acres. And it does seem like, of course, this is a function of the size of the sale of a property. So you buy more property, you take on more potential cost of replacing the trees. And so, again, it does, to me, that seems like a place where there could be some discussion about making some kind of compensation based on some kind of metric, like making it relative to something or something. So to repeal it outright without understanding what's going to replace it, I guess I'm confused about what's going on. I understand that there's a need to potentially change things because it's causing a burden, yes. But then if you're gonna buy 15 acres of wooded property to cut the trees down and build something, for land, it seems like there's the planning commission clearly, I mean, there's pages of code that are being repealed. So I feel like, yeah, a little more explanation might be helpful right now to understand what we're doing, because I really don't understand.
Any other commissioner comments? City manager?
I can ask Dennis Stakowicz to address it further if you'd like, during the discussion period.
I'd be happy to do so, and thank you for the opportunity. This, just for clarification's sake, this came up specifically dealing with parcel 12, and for the commission and community's understanding, we sold as a city parcel 12 to a developer, and then subsequently a few months down the road adopted the LDC, which has this provision. So when the developer bought the property, it was unknown to them what the tree standards were going to be. After they purchased the property, we start going through the numbers and looking at this. They present us with an analysis, and it had a great concern for me because there is such a thing as a regulatory takings. And we've had conversations with the administration and attorney level. We most certainly hope we wouldn't want to get to that position, but you can overburden a piece of property with an amount of regulation for monetary value that could set the city up subject to takings through that regulation. So that concern came to mind. We had some discussions among staff. In order to address this in a timely fashion, I don't think anyone in staff would ever be opposed, or planning commission, of actually re-looking at this. But for the sake of time, to protect the city, we were asking to just go ahead and strike this from here, because really right now we're only looking at that particular piece of property that comes to mind. And I believe Harbor Vista has already moved forward, so it just seemed prudent at this juncture to kind of expedite it for the protection of the city. And again, clarifying it, the property was purchased long before the regulation.
So, and that's very helpful, that timing problem. So I guess what comes after repeal? That's not, I'm a little hesitant to throw something out when I don't know what's coming next.
Well, you could have a couple options. One is you could just repeal it outright and just leave it. You can repeal it, ask the planning commission to readdress it or to look at it again and come back with another suggestion. Like what Dennis said, what we were asking is that it at least be suspended at this point so that we can move forward with this other parcel 12 development. I mean, I think I would add one more thing, and I don't want to speak for the planning commission, but when they pass this ordinance or this portion of the ordinance, I don't think anybody costed out the impact of this. Certainly if they would have, I would think that common sense would have prevailed at that time. I think the intent was good. It was meant to preserve the tree situation in the city. However, I don't think anybody gave it any real thought as to what it would actually cost. And I think from our perspective, I mean, we don't have any objection to it going back to the planning commission and coming back with what we would recommend as something reasonable for a tree replacement. I mean, we're not talking about planting seedlings here. We're talking about planting full-grown trees. And that's a significant difference. So, thank you.
Commissioner Campana?
It would seem to me that we need to do this. We have a developer who wants to get on with his accepted development, and this is holding it up. It's not as if he's going out there to clear cut. He just wants to clear the property that he needs to do his building. We can always come back and address this ordinance, but right now we're holding him up, and it's not good for him, and it's not good for the city, and it's not good for, you know, the people that are gonna get value out of that property. So we're not doing anything wrong here. I mean, he bought the property knowing that it was gonna be, he was gonna be able to clear it as needed. So I'm fine with this. Thank you, Your Honor.
Any other commissioner? Commissioner Frazier.
I agree, it's a good idea to replant trees, but you have to look at the situation. I mean, there's many developers that, you know, created subdivisions and bought property and replanted some trees, but you have to look at like the whole development behind like certain properties. There's a huge development, they put a lot of houses in there, they still plant trees back in there for the neighborhood, but they don't plant every single tree back in. We have to, you know, and like Mike and Mr. City Manager said, it's a full-grown tree, not a little seedling, so it's expensive. And can we look at the property? There's so many variables, you know, the size of the property, the size of the building, and how the trees will affect. I mean, most people replant trees and make it look presentable. Most developers will. But you have to look, can't say, okay, you have to have so many trees put back in. Just, I agree, it has to be relooked at.
Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds.
I'm just ready to make a motion. I move that we repeal section 54.807 of the Land Development Code and adopt ordinance number 679, and with that, refer this matter to the Planning Commission for further review on another potential ordinance on trees.
Is there a second for that? Commissioner Schlegel?
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem, any further discussion?
I think that takes care of the problems of right now, and I completely understand the need for this, and that's, I think we've talked about it.
Commissioner Schlegel?
I just think it's a really good idea to send it back and get some suggestions from the Planning Commission, and I'm glad that that was incorporated into the motion. Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Smith?
I would like to see this go back to the Planning Commission. I had the same thought that Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds had. I understand that we made this agreement with the developer before the LDC went into place, but I do think we still need to look at preserving tree cover in the city of Marquette. So I'd be interested to see what the Planning Commission comes back with on this.
Commissioner Hill? Any comments?
No, I agree with those comments, and I appreciate the amendment.
Any other commissioners? All those in favor of the motion?
Roll call.
Oh, we need a roll call. This is my tradition, is to miss the roll call. Clerk, please conduct a roll call.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Campana?
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Schlegel?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds?
Yes.
Mayor Stonehouse?
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item number 7, consent agenda. Commissioners, we need a motion. If I can have one, please. Commissioner Smith.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
And I have a second. Commissioner Frazier.
Second.
Commissioner Smith, any further comments? Mr. Frazier?
No comment.
Any other commissioner? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed? By no. Hearing none, motion passes 7-0. Unfinished business number 8, which is Coaster 2 Preservation Society, and that is a lease agreement. Clerk, if you will please read the background.
Thank you, Mayor. Background. Coaster 2 Preservation Society, a Delaware corporation, is requesting the City Commission approve a lease agreement for mooring space at the Lower Harbor Bulkhead. The Coaster 2 has changed ownership and will be embarking on an around-the-world nearshore journey. The new owners would like to maintain the Marquette flagship status the ship has maintained for the last 6 years. In exchange for mooring space valued at $1,860, the ship will perform several services for the City of Marquette. In addition to flying the city's flag and promotional activities, the ship's crew will provide superior watershed partnership with Great Lakes water quality monitoring and act as an ambassador to the Marquette area sister cities partnership while underway. The proposed lease agreement was introduced at the Commission's May 28, 2019 meeting and approved as recommended to move the lease agreement forward to the June 10, 2019 meeting. Fiscal effect: the city will benefit from services in exchange for mooring space valued at $1,860 for each 12-month period of the lease. Recommendation, approve the lease agreement with Coaster 2 Preservation Society for use of the mooring space at Lower Harbor Bulkhead for a period of 2 years and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Commissioners, your pleasure, please. Motion, discussion? Mayor Pro Tem?
I move that we approve the lease agreement with Coaster 2 Preservation Society for the use of mooring space at Lower Harbor Bulkhead for a period of 2 years and authorize the mayor and the city clerk to sign the agreement.
That was well said. Thank you. Is there a second, please? Commissioner Campana?
I would second that motion.
Any further discussion?
This has been a constant thing that we've done with the Coaster or other boats, and it's a good agreement, and I don't think there's much else to say about it.
Commissioner Campana, any further?
It says that they're going on a round-the-world journey. When do they leave and how long will they be gone?
Do we have any information when they would be departing?
I believe they've already left. They left the city and they're, imagine, what's that? St. Louis, were you following them on?
They're on Instagram, so you can follow them on Instagram, but they're gone. They've departed.
They headed down the Lake Huron side and are going to go out the St. Lawrence Seaway eventually and do an inland, go down the inland passage south to Florida. And their Instagram account.
How long will they be gone?
Year, at least.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Frazier?
I know a little bit about them because we used to store their boat for them, but as far as the former owners told me, they might be going to the East Coast. That's what I've heard. But they will be gone for a while. We don't know if they're coming back or when they come back, but they're going to continue to fly the city's flag no matter where they go and show Marquette's pride.
Commissioner Campana, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so they're going to be gone for a year. That means, but all they're going to do is fly the flag.
Fly the flag.
Fly the flag. Okay, that's a good thing, but they're not going to dock down at the Lower Harbor, right? Can
Has
I have their
anybody ever
space?
read Paddle to the Sea? This is Sail to the Sea.
Okay.
And it really is, I think, a good opportunity. We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed by no? Hearing none, motion passes 7-0. That brings us down to item number 9. Clerk, if you will, please read the background.
Thank you, Mayor. Background. The Superior Watershed Partnership has requested the City Commission consider a lease agreement for storage space at Lakeview Arena. Staff has worked with the City Attorney and Superior Watershed Partnership to draft a standard lease agreement which provides for the terms and conditions of the request. The monthly lease payment shall be $75. The term of the lease is 5 months. This short-term lease is needed to store solar panels for one of their programs. The proposed lease agreement was introduced at the Commission's May 28, 2019 meeting and approved as recommended to move the lease agreement forward to the June 10, 2019 meeting. Fiscal effect, the Lakeview Arena Fund will receive $375 in revenue. Recommendation, approve the lease agreement with Superior Watershed Partnership for use of storage space at Lakeview Arena for a period of 5 months and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Commissioners, what is your pleasure? Commissioner Frazier?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the lease agreement with Superior Watershed Program for the use of storage space at Lakeview Arena for a period of 5 months and authorize the mayor.
Is there a second on the motion? Commissioner Smith?
Second.
Commissioner Frazier, anything further?
Nope, sounds like a good deal for the city. They do a lot of great work for the city.
Commissioner Smith? Any other commissioner? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed by no? Hearing none, motion passes 7-0. That brings us down to item number 10, which is the proclamation on Marquette Pride Month. Madam Clerk, if you will please read the background.
Thank you, Mayor. Background. UP Rainbow Pride contacted the city asking to recognize the month of June 2019 as Pride Month in the city of Marquette. Attached is the proclamation. Fiscal effect, none. Recommendation, recognize the proclamation and declare June 2019 as Pride Month. alternatives as determined by the commission.
Commissioners, your pleasure. Commissioner Hill.
I think we move to adopt the proclamation. Do we have to make a motion?
We have, well, we're accepting the motion, we are making the motion to accept the proclamation.
Yes. I make the motion that we accept the proclamation.
Is there a second? Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
Commissioner Hill, any comments?
Well, so I had the honor of attending the UP Pride Month meeting last week, and Marquette does have a non-discrimination ordinance on its books that was passed 5 years ago, but we hadn't made the effort to recognize Pride Month. This is a national event that happens in June, and the timing is that this is the month that folks in New York City started to say, no, you can't just push us around and say that just because we're different, you're going to treat us differently and treat us and discriminate against us because of who we are. And so over time, this has changed quite a bit in our country, just in the last 10 to 15 years. And I think it's really important that we continue to recognize that everyone is welcome in our community. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm just going to echo what Commissioner Hill said. I think it's important that as a city we recognize this. And I think, when this, I was fairly annoyed over the weekend when TV6 posted a story and thousands of people posted really asinine things online. And that kind of stuff made me realize why we need this kind of thing, why we need to recognize this kind of thing, because it's still there. We have to make sure that we're looking out for each other. And so I'm just happy that the city of Marquette and other cities around the nation are doing this kind of thing. And I'm glad that we are able to.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Smith?
I'm very proud of the city of Marquette for taking this on. Thank you, Commissioner Hill, for bringing it to the commission. I have a request. I'm wondering if we are able to read this out loud or have the city clerk read it out loud, because I do think the words are powerful and important.
We certainly can do that.
Thank you, Chris.
Whereas the city of Marquette is a welcoming community and an exceptional place to live, learn, work, play, build a business, and raise a family, and whereas Marquette recognizes the importance of equality and freedom, and whereas the nation was founded upon and is guided by a set of principles that includes every person has been created equal, that each has rights to their life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that each shall be accorded the full recognition and protection of law. And whereas the city of Marquette's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersexual, and asexual community are a vital part of all fields and professions and contribute to a stronger community. And whereas the city of Marquette is dedicated to fostering acceptance of all its residents and preventing discrimination, harassment, and bullying based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. And whereas Marquette is strengthened by and thrives upon the rich diversity of ethnic, cultural, racial, gender, and sexual identities of all its residents, all of which contribute to the vibrant character of our city. And whereas it is imperative that young people in the community, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, feel valued, safe, empowered, and supported by their peers and community leaders. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Mayor and City Commission of the City of Marquette hereby proclaim and recognize June 12, 2019 as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersexual, and asexual Pride Month in the City of Marquette, and urge residents to recognize the contributions made by the members of the LGBTQIA+ community and to actively promote the principles of equality and liberty. Dated this 10th day of June 2019.
Any other commissioner comments? Seeing none, this is a very small thing we've done. And yet this is a very big thing that we've done. Because the city has stood up, the city has said it officially, the city has put the resolution together, and I hope we are speaking with a strong and powerful voice. So now it's time to have, I think, the vote, right? All those commissioners voting in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Item passes 7-0. That brings us down to number 10, new business, which is, no, excuse me, number 11, which is the Williams Park Athletic Courts and ADA Access Professional Services Contract Award. Madam Clerk, if you will please read the background.
Thank you, sir. Background. At its March 13th, 2017 meeting, the City Commission authorized submitting a Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund grant application for renovation of 3 tennis courts, 1 basketball court, and construction of accessible routes within the park. The city received an executed grant agreement from the state in December of 2018. The grant award is $112,000 with a match requirement of $48,000. $40,000 of the match will be provided by the Marquette Tennis Association with $8,000 of general fund obligation. The total project budget of $160,000 includes design and construction services. Community Services staff issued a request for proposals for design and construction oversight services. Qualifications were due on May 30th, 2019. The following proposals were received. GEI Consultants, Marquette, $16,500. UPEA, Ishpeming, $22,800. Payne and Dolan, Greenville, Wisconsin, $36,920. Each firm's proposal was evaluated by the community services staff. The proposals are scored according to criteria listed in the RFQ with a possible 100 points. The scores from each team member were averaged by firms as follows. GEI Consultants, 96.33, UPEA, 82.33, and Payne and Dolan, 71.33. Staff recommends GEI Consultants be awarded the bid as the firm offering the most services for the least cost. GEI's construction oversight and design review proposals exceeded their competition, and they were the low bid. Fiscal effect, this project is budgeted for and is within the expected costs for professional services. Recommendation, approve GEI Consultants proposal for design and construction oversight of the Williams Athletic Court renovations and ADA access project in the amount of $16,500, and direct the city attorney to develop a professional services agreement. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
I believe I had 2 folks that offered to speak on this item. Are you still willing to do so? Or if you necessary, please do. This is your opportunity. If not, that's fine too. There's 2 individuals, right.
Thank you, dear commissioners and city manager. I'm Joe Havican. I'm at 131 East College, and I'm representing the Marquette Tennis Association. A brief background of how we got here. In 2016, the Marquette Tennis Association was approached by the city to raise a matching grant part of what the city was applying for a grant to improve the Mickey Johnson tennis courts at Williams Park on Ohio Street. It's a long story there, but that's how that tennis court is now named. That ask was for $15,000 to improve the tennis courts. That grant was denied. In 2017, the Marquette Tennis Association was again approached by the city to raise matching part of the grant that the city was applying for to improve the tennis courts, basketball courts, and to provide an ADA path to the park. That ask was $40,000, and as you can see, that grant was approved. On behalf of the Marquette Tennis Association, I am happy to announce that we are $3,000 away from the $40,000 goal, and we are very confident that we'll be able to remain to get the necessary amount to reach this goal. The Marquette Tennis Association would like to thank the service clubs, the foundations, the tennis pro that ran a clinic for us, the individuals and businesses that donated. These donations came from all over, both in the town and outside of the town. I'd like to publicly thank Debbie Cook for all her hard work in this effort, because without her, this wouldn't have happened. And I'm here for any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioners, your pleasure. Commissioner Campana.
I'd like to make the motion to approve GEI Consultants' proposal for design and construction oversight of the Williams Athletic Court renovations and ADA access project in the amount of $16,500 and direct the city attorney to develop a professional service agreement.
Is there a second, Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
Commissioner Campana, any further comments?
I have questions. Thank you, Mr. Havacan, for that presentation. Mr. Havacan has played tennis for a very long time in the city. He's probably one of the better tennis players, so he knows a lot about what's going on here. Were you involved in the last reconstruction of the courts? The last reconstruction, the last resurfacing was 7-10 years?
The Tennis Association redid it at a cost of $8,000 that we raised back in 2006. And the members, there's 17 of us at the time, did 440 volunteer hours to complete the resurfacing of the tennis courts only.
Okay. And as you well know, they are in pretty bad shape right now. But the city does a wonderful job in keeping them up. I will admit, I've witnessed that, so we appreciate the city. My question to GEI, you guys are going to do the design. Have you done courts before?
Yes.
Where?
Several on the western end of the UP and a couple downstate.
Okay. Who's going to do the actual construction?
To be determined.
To be determined. What's that?
It's going to go for bid.
You'll get somebody that knows what they're doing. Huh?
Can you come to the microphone
come.
so everybody can see?
You know, my concern is with any project, and I know you guys are good, you've been good, you know, we've always had you for many projects. I have a lot of faith in what you're going to do, but it's important that these courts be done by somebody that knows what they're doing, somebody who's done other courts.
Correct.
And those courts, right now there's one good court, one medium, and one really bad one, and that has to do with the subsurface. And I mean, it's like totally got to be taken away.
Yes.
We hope, do they come in and, are you going to have Mr. Havacan's advice or any advice of somebody who really knows the courts?
I'd always welcome any advice, so if, we'll stop and talk to him after this, give him our cards to make sure he can contact us. Yeah, it's, you know, it's an interesting site with all the rock, the slope and everything that's going on there. The subsurface drainage is probably the most important thing to be looking at for a long-term rehabilitation of that site. The way the project will run or is intended to run is that we'll provide a design for that will be engineering-wise sound and meet the needs of the tennis association. The city will put that for bid. We'll review the bids from the contractors. We'll evaluate from our perspective the experience, the price, and all of that, and we'll provide a recommendation to the city. The city will then decide who the contractor will be.
Good. I just, again, I hope that you know, accept the advice of some of these guys who've been around for a very long time.
Always.
And know the problems with the courts, because they're not evident unless you start playing on them.
Yeah.
The problems that exist. Well, okay. That's all I have. I'm sure you'll do a good job. I thank you.
Yep.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Frazier.
I remember that you did a little bit of reconstruction on the area. It's good that you're going to have ADA access to the area because it will be benefit to the courts, the tennis, also benefit to the playground. That's another good thing about your development. So it's great that you're accepting ADA availability because that's what when Presque Isle board back in the day and we wanted to develop a playground for Presque Isle, we concentrated on ADA accessibility. So I'm glad you're doing that. You guys do a great job.
Any other commissioners? Seeing none, all those commissioners in favor of this motion, please indicate by saying yes.
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 Any opposed by no, please indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion passes 7-0. That brings us down to item 12, and that's the assignment of interest for Founders Landing Parcel 2. City Clerk, if you will please read the agenda item.
Thank you, Mayor. Background. The city is being asked by Market Opportunity LLC hotel developers to approve the attached assignment of interest for the Founders Landing Parcel 2 purchase agreement. The document amends the executed purchase agreement such that Market Opportunity LLC may close on the property immediately and begin development, while the remainder of the Founders Landing Joint Venture LLC, HRS, completes their due diligence period. HRS will still be subject to the obligations agreed to in the purchase agreement. Legal teams for all parties have reviewed and approved the document. Fiscal effect. The realization of a one-time $1.1 million payment is now broken into two. with Marquette Opportunity LLC being responsible for approximately $666,619.66, and HRS $433,380.35. Recommendation: approve the assignment of interest as presented and authorize the execution of the document. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
Mr. Paulson, I believe you had requested time?
Well, we're just making ourselves available.
Okay. If we have any questions, we'll be able to call on you then. Mr. Verito?
Frank Jeff Verito, these are my opinions. For a third time, no renderings are provided in the packet. Of course, we wouldn't expect them this third time. The previous two readings were when we sorely needed them. Because they were omitted the first two times, it just adds to the incompetency that nothing except an infrastructural drawing is provided tonight. The fact remains that we never received our promised opportunity to provide input. No one has bothered to explain why in all the time between October 9th and April 29th, the renderings we saw briefly on October 9th couldn't have been copied for inclusion in the April 29th packet. 7 months this board had. Requests from several unrelated residents to provide them were entirely ignored. So long as Mr. Stonehouse assured us of this opportunity, it was up to him to make sure this was fulfilled. After our May 28th meeting, Mr. Schlegel confronted me on this matter, that being his choice of words that he was, quote, trying to visualize. Regardless of how familiar he is with the plan, the public had every right to visualize it too, and to comment accordingly. Although no voices raised, Mr. Schlegel lost his cool with me, saying the height is 32 feet, as if that's all the person would need to know. We'd like to see renderings that show where the height is 32 feet, and if there are plans to raise the elevation as he's done with his other lake blocking developments. How will the buildings be situated on the property? The design, the cladding, the landscaping, the snow storage, just basic things that someone who served on a planning commission would realize that people would want to know, especially our South Side residents who suffer the greatest impact. 3 readings in a row, we had no chance to comment effectively after Mr. Stonehouse assured us there'd be plenty of time for public input. He was right about the plenty of time, but to suggest we'd be offered any semblance of a decent public opportunity was an utter lie.
Anyone else to address the commission? Anyone else? Wait a minute, no, we're controlling that, that's right, okay. So we're finished with the persons who had reserved time. That brings us down to commissioners. What is your pleasure? Commissioner Frazier.
I make a motion to approve the assignment of interest as presented and authorize the execution of the document.
Is there a second? Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds.
Second.
Commissioner Frazier, further comment?
Be a great thing for Founders Lane. It's been planned for a long time. They've talked about it for a while, and it's hard. They can give you renderings, but it's hard to know what exactly what it's going to be until they actually start working on the site. As a lot of people know, construction varies, and it always depends on the area. I mean, they could have great plans, and things change in a whim. So,
Mayor Pro Tem.
I was in agenda review, so I had the opportunity to understand this a little better from the city manager, Mike Angeli. So I just wanted him to just briefly speak on why we're doing this particularly so that the audience completely understands.
Sure, thank you. We had sold the entire parcel at Founders Landing to a combined group of LLCs, one of which is here tonight. We had provided a due diligence period of, I believe it was 6 months, I'm not quite sure, with an extension of a possible 3 months on that due diligence. The other party requested the extension of due diligence, which would put us later into the summer. However, the hotel group, which is here tonight, wanted to begin their construction immediately. They've completed their due diligence. So this action will allow them to close on that parcel of the property and begin their construction. And I would just add one motion include that the proceeds will be put into reserve for debt reduction, please. Thank you.
We can do that. Commissioner Hill.
Right, so my understanding is that this, what we're doing today is about the sale of the land to allow the construction to begin. And so this is very narrowly focused on the sale of the land. And then the next step is to go through the process of approving the design, which goes through the Planning Commission before it comes to us. Is that correct? Okay.
Thank you. Halfway.
Okay.
Okay, this is all about the actual process of selling the land. The design for the hotel has already been through site plan review at the Planning Commission. That was part of the due diligence review. And actually, I stand corrected, it was administrative site plan review because it fell under the form-based code. And it was completely in compliance with the form-based code, if I remember correctly. Is that right, Barry? No variances, it was all legit. So that development has actually been approved in accordance with the zoning ordinance, which was part of the due diligence. Now you're just clearing a pathway to be able to close on the property because the other group that they're partners with just isn't ready at this time yet.
Thank you.
Further comments, commissioners? Commissioner Schlegel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for the clarification, Dennis. I don't want, I'm not speaking or things that are being said in regards to a conversation that I've had may or may not reflect the exact numbers, what is detailed in your form-based code. And I just want that to be known because, you know, that is all set aside prior and my explanation, I think, is one that kind of just came through with Ms. Hill's issue there is that all of the parameters fell within the form-based code, which was the go-ahead for it. So, thank you.
Any other commissioners? That's it? Madam Clerk, if you can conduct the vote, please.
Certainly. Commissioner Campana? Yes. Commissioner Frazier?
Yep.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Schlegel?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds?
Yes.
Mayor Stonehouse?
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. That brings us down to item 13, local development agreement with Marquette Opportunity LLC for parcels 2B and 2C of Founders Landing. Madam Clerk, if you will please read the background.
Thank you, sir. Background. Marquette Opportunity LLC and the City of Marquette will be closing on the sale of Founders Landing parcels 2B and 2C this week. The last obligation for both parties in the purchase agreement was to come to terms on a local development agreement that outlines responsibilities for each party with regards to the development of the property. The attached local development agreement has been reviewed by all legal teams and is considered mutually agreeable to all parties. Fiscal effect, none by this action. Recommendation, approve the local development agreement with Marquette Opportunity LLC as presented and authorize the execution of the document. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
I'm not seeing anyone wishing to comment on this that had reserved time. I think not. That then brings us to the Commission and Commissioner Campana.
I'd like to make the motion to approve the local development agreement with Marquette Opportunity LLC as presented and authorize the execution of the document.
Is there a second? Commissioner Schlegel?
Second motion.
Commissioner Campana?
I think we need to do this now just so that the development gets going. Without it, it would be stalled, and they're all set to go, and the city's all set to go, so I would like to see this passed.
Commissioner Schlegel?
No comment.
Commissioners, any other comments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you will please conduct the roll call.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Campana?
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Schlegel?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds?
Yes.
Mayor Stonehouse?
Yes, Motion passes 7-0. That brings us down to item 14, which is the Presque Isle Marina Construction Contract Award. Madam Clerk, if you will please read the background.
Thank you, Mayor. Background, at its March 13th, 2017 meeting, the City Commission authorized submitting a Michigan Department of Natural Resources Waterways Grant Program application for Phase 3 Presque Isle Dock demolition and floating pier installation. In December of 2017, the city received correspondence from the DNR indicating that Phase 3 was being recommended to the state for funding. At its October 29, 2018 meeting, the City Commission approved Coleman Engineering Company's proposal for design and construction oversight of the dock replacement at Presque Isle Marina. At its November 26, 2018 meeting, the City Commission amended the 2019 Presque Isle Marina budget to include an additional $40,032 due to an error in the state legislative process and approved the Waterways Grant Agreement, committing $581,900 to reconstruct the piers at Presque Isle Marina. Staff issued a request for proposals that was opened on May 31, 2019. Associated Contractors, LLC, in conjunction with Kosking Industrial, DeRocher Marine Division, provided the only proposal with a base bid of $1,401,607. The proposal listed bid alternates for removal of the North Pier and dredging of that area and additional amounts of $199,080 and $164,380 respectively. Additional savings to the base bid may be realized if state permitting allows for the reuse of bin wall fill and dredge materials within the Founder's Pile reuse project. Some cost savings may be also realized if any materials are allowed to be used for filling and site remediation at the We Energies Presque Isle Power Plant. Fiscal effect: approval of this construction contract would require amending the 2019 Presque Isle Marina budget to include an additional $277,807. It will be funded with the bond issue for this project. Recommendation: approve the Associated Contractors LLC proposal for the base bid only in the not-to-exceed amount of $1,401,607. Amend the 2019 Presque Isle Marina budget to include an additional $277,807 and authorize the city attorney to draft the contract. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
Commissioners, your pleasure. Commissioner Campana?
I move that we approve the Associated Contractors LLC proposal for the base bid only in the not-to-exceed amount of $1,401,607. Amend the 2019 Presque Isle Marina budget to include an additional $277,807 and authorize the city attorney to draft the contract.
Is there a second for that? Commissioner Schlegel?
Second.
Commissioner Campana, any further comments?
I was out of town for the work session on this, so I was really at a disadvantage. I tried to play catch up on this. I think I understand it. I understand that we're not going to do the alternate bids for Northern Pier dredging and removal of the North Pier. That is correct. Okay. Comes in over budget, but we're going to work real hard to get it down to budget. It's also a yes. I have faith in city staff and in their financial planning, and I think we have to do this. We really can't back out of this. We need to rebuild the Presque Isle Marina to this extent. I'm for it. We can do this. The figures will come together. I have faith in it. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Schlegel?
I have faith in it as well. The fact is we have to make this investment. You know, it's another piece of what makes America or our Marquette community great, and we owe it to our voters and people that are utilizing the facility to give them something that they can use and be uh, uh, you know, used safely and not have to worry about anything from, you know, safe steps to having their kids out there or anything along those lines. So I think it's a good proposal.
Commissioner Smith.
I was hoping that either city manager or city staff could provide a little bit of history just for the benefit of the public and for those of us who haven't been on the commission long enough to remember the beginning of this.
I'll give John the opportunity.
Yeah, so thanks for the opportunity. Going back a number of years, the marinas within the city of Marquette have been funded through the city's coffers, and this particular marina was built almost 40 years ago. Over time, we've worked diligently with the city commission. City staff has to come up with fiscal policy that helps to pay for these things. So less tax dollars and more rate structure stuff that pays for the infrastructure. So we've gone through that process, and the marina users have been paying fees that are starting to build a fund that is going to help to pay for this generation and future generations. So we've gone down the path of fiscal responsibility with the marinas. As it stands right now, each year the slip holders' fees are raised 5%, and so that's been an ongoing fiscal policy that we've been carrying on for about the last, I think, 13 years. So they've been working up to this. This particular project, as we move forward, we were working with some numbers that were brought forward by AECom through a previous design, and we've increased those as we budgeted for it by 20% above what we saw through inflation. So we built in contingency as we went forward. At this time, we were hearing all the way through the mobilization and the actual removal of the piers that are out there, what has been a much higher cost than what was originally brought forward in that plan. So that's kind of what we've been dealing with. The grant process through the state's been very excited about what the city of Marquette has been doing as far as our fiscal policy and our efforts to hold the users accountable for these facilities. And they've actually used the policy that the city commission brought forward as an example to other communities that are looking at doing the same thing. So I think we're well on our way to making some responsible decisions here. And with this particular project, there are some opportunities to save some dollars beyond what you're voting on tonight. But that has to do with the state permitting and how those samples are able to be used. So that fill material, if we can use it in such a way, there's going to be some additional savings to what you see tonight.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Hill.
Thank you for that background, and I'm really glad that we're getting here now to the point where we can move forward with this. I know it has been a long time, and you've been working hard on this. But I was the new thing this time was the addition of the We Energy site as a potential place for the dredgings, and I wondered what that would mean, that the work would start at the Presque Isle Power Plant this fall as well? Because my understanding, this is all to be done in the fall. Could you clarify the timeline?
Yeah, so the goal is to start this fall and complete prior to next season. If we had to amend next season slightly in the spring due to winter conditions that held things over, we've done things like that in the past. The addition of the Presque Isle Power Plant really is an opportunity to potentially save some dollars on the scope item of disposal of concrete from the marina. So if that's something that is allowed through the state permitting, there's a line item in there, I believe it's about $90,000 for disposal of those materials. Being able to utilize that in the general area for capping that facility would realize some additional savings. And conversely, if the fill is not able to be used in the Founders Landing pier redevelopment, pile redevelopment, project, the We Energy site might be an opportunity. And from what I understand, the timing could be made to work. So,
Thank you.
Commissioner Frazier?
I remember when this project first got going many years ago, I wasn't excited about the design, but I know it had to be done. A lot of smaller boaters are losing their slips due to the design, but the city has in their background of the paperwork, they are gonna look at the waiting list and possibly increase the size of the marina later if enough people want a slip. So it's good that the city's paying attention, and I know the two I even looked at, it was on, many generations have been in that marina. Mayor Stonehouse probably was in that marina at one time. My grandparents are in that marina at one time. My dad was in the marina one time. I was even in that marina one time. It served many generations. It's lasted for a long time. The pier I was on is already gone. The only one they're going to have trouble is the big concrete pier. That's one they're looking for help on. And construction's going to be a lot. Hopefully it gets started this fall, depending on weather. And it'll be nice when it gets done because it really needs updating. It's been a long time coming, and it'll be great when it's done.
Anyone else? Seeing none, just a couple of quick comments. I think it was actually 50 years, because I remember the marina being open in 1970. So we'll call it 50 years that marina's been in use, which is pretty good longevity on it. And it also comes down to the city is a port city. And these are expenses that along the way we have to bear when we are a port city. We have to have the marinas and have them operating. Commissioners, seeing no further comment, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes. Yes.
Any opposed by saying no? The motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 15, which was an added item. Mr. Landers, were you intending to speak again? Yes. Please do.
Thank you. Dan Landers, 2808 Granite Point Drive. I just want to, two things. Appreciate your comment, Commissioner Slagle, regarding the LDC being, I think you said a living document or a working document. In any case, it's indicated to me that it's something that can be improved upon or amended as needed. And the second thing, when I was up earlier, I forgot to present my petitions, which I intend to do at this time. And all of these businesses are, businesses that would like us to allow pole signs in the 3rd Street and, the Washington Street District. So that's why I'm presenting this.
Please present it to the clerk. Ms. Stucco, you had indicated to speak. I think there's an opportunity now if you'd like to speak again. I think I'm okay. Okay, Mr. Campana, you had asked for this item to be added. If you would care to carry it.
Okay, I don't know if I have to make a motion. Do I have to make a motion of some sort?
Why don't we consider it just as an open
But
period
the
of
topic
discussion and
is a
explain it.
discussion of pole signs in the DDA 3rd Street corridor. So I will make a motion to talk about that.
That's been, okay, we can suspend the rules then. Do we have a second to suspend rules? We do.
Second.
So we're going to suspend the rules.
Everyone in favor for suspending rules for discussion? Indicate by
Yes.
saying yes. Yes, we are. Good. Go.
First of all, Andrew Peterson, local dentist, wanted to speak, but he didn't reserve time. Could we hear him speak, Your Honor? He's got something important to say. He forgot to come up and request speak time.
He is your expert witness. You may call him.
Dr. Peterson, if you would.
Dr. Andrew Peterson, 1010 North 3rd Street. So 2 years ago, I bought a dental practice on North 3rd Street, and there was not a sign present from the previous dentist. I have a non-conforming lot that is set back, and the only type of sign that would work in my property is a pole sign. The 3 businesses to the north of me have north-south facing pole signs, and we have no sign. I have my name on the door, but I can't get a sign. I have found that it is increasingly difficult to get a sign here in Marquette. Being a new business owner, I've spent far too much time doing this. Teeth is my business, and I want to help my patients, but we have lost patients, elderly patients that can't find our building. I have not been able to get new patients because they can't find our building. I am using references like where the building past Togo's or where the building on this side of another business, and that should not be how I'm having people find my business. So all I'm asking is to try to get this sign so that it matches how the other businesses in just past me to the north have north-south. They say that I can do a blade sign. I'm so far set back that you would not be able to see it from the road. Doing a east-west sign wouldn't work. People are going to drive right past me. So I just ask that we look at this again, getting a sign in the city of Marquette a little easier for everybody, because I have become an expert witness on signs, and teeth should be what I do. So thank you.
Mr. Capano.
Okay, so we have controversy as to whether pole signs should be allowed on 3rd Street. This came about, to be brief background here, when the Land Development Code was approved in February. And it was changed to say no pole signs or monument signs will be allowed. Monument signs are like what you find in a cemetery. This was it was a very commendable piece of work, the Land Development Code. Very difficult piece of work. It took a lot of people a lot of time, but it was 400 pages long. Nothing but zoning and ordinances, rules and regulations. You know, I sat on a committee that was supposed to monitor it. The commission passed it, but you know, there's so much information, we didn't catch everything. You can't possibly catch everything. But now, errors and problems are slowly coming up. And this is one of them. I'm told that monument signs will be allowed on 3rd Street, but pole signs will not. So this is one of the things that's going to be corrected. I'll come back to that. I got involved when Dr. Peterson said to me, hey, I can't put a sign up. And I thought, well, that's really pretty strange. And like he said, I went outside and I looked at his building. It's a house, converted house into an office business. And the next 3 houses going north on 3rd Street are houses just like his, converted into offices. And each one of them has the identical sign. It's 3 feet by 3 feet with poles. The sign is no higher than 7 feet. Well, looks good to me, but that's my personal opinion. I'm thinking, now how can they have 3 and he can't have it? Just not fair. Another thing, if you take a ride up and down 3rd Street, you're going to find almost 40 pole signs. So they do exist there. Signage is very important to any business, be it big, be it small. You have to have signage. As he pointed out, people will not find you easily, and if they can't find you, they're going to go right by you to the next guy that they can find. So we got to have signage that people can recognize, people can find the business. I have to say that 3rd Street versus the downtown, they're 2 different animals. I mean, downtown, there's no room for pole signs. Pole signs will not work, I will admit to that. Just, it'd be so out of place. But you take 3rd Street, it's totally different. You have homes, you have driveways, you have sidewalks, you have lawns. It's, it can be treated differently. I know the city wants it to be a walkable, and that's commendable that we have it that way. A walkable community, which means we don't have a lot of obtrusive signs. And I think that's what they were getting at. But the dirty, dark secret here is we all know 3rd Street is kind of a busy street. It's congested, it's got biker lanes, cars parking on both sides. You got people jaywalking everywhere. I have heard people have got hit. I have heard car doors have been ripped off. I mean, you can't, and I know for a fact, you cannot get out of your car facing north without looking, because if you do, you're going to lose your car door. So safety is an issue on 3rd Street. Now, when you're coming to town, you know, not everybody lives in Marquette. They do come here for a dentist or a doctor or whatnot. You're driving down 3rd Street. You don't have time to look 90 degrees this way or 90 degrees that way, because if you do, you're going to hit somebody. So I really believe that so blade signs don't work. I don't think monument signs will work. You gotta have a respectable pole sign. Monument signs, by the middle of November, they'll be 3/4 buried in snow. And if the snow doesn't bury them, the snowbanks will hide them. So I don't have a lot of faith in monument signs on 3rd Street. We got to have the rules. I'm with this, but I don't think small signs like 3 feet by 3 feet up, 7 feet high is not a bad thing. Now, we don't want to start finding out who said this has to be this way or this is how it happened. We have a problem, and I personally would like to see it fixed. Now, how we fix it, not my job, but let's get it fixed. If we have to kick it back to the planning commission or whatnot, but I think it's important that we address this problem. I have been told, and I've talked to more than I care to people on 3rd Street that want to keep it as is. I was told that pole signs as they exist now cannot be made better. What you have is all you can have. You can maybe change it if something changes, like the hours of operation or something, but you can't make it better than what it is. And I don't think that's right either. Then you're going to have some ugly looking pole signs in 3rd Street. So, it's a problem. Let's fix it. Do what we got to do. I appreciate all the work that people do to come up with these ideas, but it's a problem. I would hope that we can send this back to the planning commission if we have to, and I'd like to see it back here with a recommendation within 30 days. 30 days. We can't afford to, city government has a tendency to put things off forever. We got to get a sign up for this guy. You are losing business when you don't have signage. I know that. I had a business. You got to let people know you're out there. So that's my take on it, Your Honor. Thank you very much.
Okay. You talked for a long time, Dave.
Thank you.
You know a lot about signs. I was trying to write down a list here of how many signs are on 3rd Street. I got to 8, but I believe you that there's probably closer to 40. I was just trying to think of who would affect. I don't disagree with you at all, Dave. I think that's something we have businesses coming forward to us having this issue. I think it's important that we look at it again. I am in favor of sending it to the Planning Commission with that kind of timeline. The only thing is, as you were talking, you did mention that the issue, you see it as 3rd Street, but as you look at Washington too, I can think of 3 on my own once you hit 4th Street, 4th and down. So I think we can't also ignore that, or we have to look at that in the future, like the gas stations and New York Deli and then the hotel. So I feel like we still gotta approach Washington too. So, but I don't disagree with you at all.
Question for staff. Dennis, was this something that came from the 3rd Street corridor proposal?
It's a combination of things. Mona Lang had put together communication that I passed along to the city manager. I believe it may have been passed on, but started with a recommendation from the sign committee, which Mona chaired, probably the better part of 14 years ago when it first started, but they were looking at breaking out vehicle signs versus pedestrian-orientated signs and eliminating pole signs and classifying them as freestanding signs and reducing the height of those freestanding signs. So that's where it really started. And then when the Third Street corridor planning effort was done, and that group was here for a week and had those open charrettes with the community. There was talk then about making it more pedestrian scale, but also along with that, allowing more of different type of signs. So for instance, in the LDC, before you couldn't have certain signs in the windows. Now you can have like 50% more or something like that. And then they were promoting more eclectic signs. You remember like the eyeglasses on top of the eyeglass doctor thing or whatever. So those were the trade-offs that came out of that Third Street plan. And those were the two major components or planning archives, if you will, that were used by the Planning Commission when they put together their recommendations and finalized it in the code. Along with a long laundry list of challenges over the years that we're seeing with signs. We had a lot of issues with multi-tenant properties and allocation formulas and things like that, and they cleaned up a bit of that as well. So, yeah, long Stackwit's answer is yes.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm just, for my personal purposes here, these monument signs were not incorporated as a recommended change to the LDC's new version. They were just adopted along with the older, many of the older things are already in place as far as stipulations.
I'm kind of confused on the question, so.
I want to make I guess what I'm thinking of here is that this was just a ordinance that was carried on from a previous program, such as the
Third Street Code, where they drafted the actual code as part of that plan.
Right.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct for that.
So, and that's a relatively new adoption that really hasn't gone very far since we put it in place, as far as I'm concerned.
The plan and code for Third Street were done, I want to say about 3 years ago,
Right.
somewhere around that time frame. And because we were building up to do the LDC, the plan was adopted, but the code never was, because we didn't want to adopt it and then have to go back and re-amend it and things to do the LDC.
Sure. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I think this is, and there were a lot of things that were in place. The neon changes, the size and allotment of signage that you can put in your window, things like that. All of those areas that were changed 15 years ago were looked at again during this process and switched out again. And then they said, okay, we're no longer going to only allow you to put a 3x3 in your window. You can now use up to 50% of it or even more. And these were all, just a progressive change that we just said, let's quit limiting what people want to use. I really feel that this is just one of those unfortunate things that was adopted because there wasn't anybody that was concerned about it. It wasn't run into. Nobody wanted to make a change for a long time. And now that there's possibility of some changes, I don't see any reason for it not to be changed, let alone the fact that, you got to have a place to put your snow. I get a kick out of it. I drive by Stuckos and I see people not pulling the ladder out anymore to get up there and change for the fish fry on Friday. They're going ahead and just climbing the snowbank and putting up their whitefish special. So, it makes a lot of sense. And I look forward to the Planning Commission coming back with a revision that will put this to bed.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention, and this is also, that you're there day to day. This is where that perspective, that critical perspective, the folks who are there day to day, living with these decisions about what things look like. What I'm hearing, and Dennis mentioned this a little bit, is that difference between the vehicle scale, 35 miles an hour, being able to read something, versus the pedestrian 5 miles an hour walking along, being able to read something, is really being part of the conflict here. And especially as you get further north on 3rd Street, the density changes and it becomes more like, well, maybe I'll go 45 miles an hour instead of the 25 or 30 that you're going to go and feel comfortable going, say, on Washington, right? It's that question of how, when things are set back, you start to feel like I can go faster and not have to worry, but there's the jaywalkers and everything. It's a really tough, it gets into that roadway design question, and we're about to get more bike lanes across the city as well, and so we're at this point where we're kind of like, you know, is it about the cars or is it about the, you know, how do we do this? It's a challenge all around the country. And I appreciate that. I think we're going to have a chance to revisit this. I think it's important to have that conversation, and have that conversation about what the businesses need, but then this question of many different users, and some in cars and some are walking, and how do we address that is an important conversation. I do also look forward to what the Planning Commission comes back with.
I think it's great we're finally looking at this. I know many business owners on 3rd Street. I go to those businesses on 3rd Street a lot myself, and as Mr. Commandment, I can see where you're talking about it, but I can see where pole signs are handy. I know driving, I know if I'm going to ship business, you can see the pole signs from a distance. You know, like they said about walking. If you're walking, you can see them too. You know, I can see like areas that have, you know, a land sign, like the bank, they have enough room to put it. You know, it's a very nice sign. They can make, there's all kinds of ideas for nice signs, but if you have the property, you know, Stucco's doesn't have property. A lot of the businesses on 3rd Street are confined to a certain space. They may not have property to do it. I mean, River Valley's like 2 or 3 lots. I can see it. They have property. Places, pole sign is the only way they can make it work, and I agree. It's handy to have the pole sign. I know if I'm going to service, I say, okay, there's that one, there's that one. I know if I could count 3 signs and I'm there. You know, it's easy to see. And from a car, you said, Mr. Capano said, it's hard when the people go all over the place. You got during summer bikers, car opening, back and forth, people wandering. You have to pay attention. So you can see the signs at a distance. That's like about pole signs. You can see them from a distance and know where you're going. So I think it's a good thing to look at. We should go back and check things out.
Any other commissioner? Commissioner Smith?
It sounds like we've got an issue here we need to address, but I just want to make sure that we're hearing all sides before we make a decision. So I like sending it back to the Planning Commission. If we need to do a work session or have a presentation made at one of our meetings, I wouldn't want to make a decision tonight, but I do think we need to look at it.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Campana?
Just to reiterate, I would like to see this done on a quicker basis. I mean, these people have been waiting for a long time for their signs, and you know, I don't care what we do, how we accomplish it, but can we have this in 30 days?
Well, we do have a motion on the floor.
For 30 days.
No, we
Could I make a motion?
suspended the rules. We suspended the rules.
We suspended the rules.
I'll make a motion.
I'm sorry, Dave, I don't know if 30 days is possible. I mean, we send it back to the Planning Commission. I'll ask Dennis to comment, but they have to have their own public hearings and things at that level to bring it back here, and they've got 2 meetings a month. And I don't know if they've already had their first one this month or not.
Yeah, no, that's correct, Mike. It's really the public hearing requirement. So you're going to send it back to them, and Commissioner Fraser just raised some excellent points that the Planning Commission's probably going to want to pick apart. You know, if you have a certain size lot, can you have a pole sign if you're set back? And, you know, the entire exercise of going down the street and trying to figure out what that looks like, it's going to take more than 1 meeting. But more importantly, it's the public hearing requirements, because it would be an amendment of the Land Development Code, which is considered your zoning ordinance. There's a 15-day noticing requirement for each public hearing related to that by Michigan statute. So, you know, the Planning Commission's got 15-day public hearing, which basically puts them into a 2-meeting cycle just for the public hearing, and would be the same thing for the City Commission, because you're going to do a public hearing to adopt it. So that's going to put you into a 2-meeting cycle as well, because you have to notice the hearing and then hold it essentially 2 weeks later.
Any other comments?
So, more than happy to work as quick as possible, supporting the planning commission and facilitating this, but managing expectations due to statutory requirements.
How's that, Frank?
Mayor.
I think it shouldn't be this difficult. I agree. It should be a lot easier. I mean, I know former business owners on that street that said they had an awful time trying to get a sign for their store. I mean, if we want business on 3rd Street, we have to make some adjustments and make things rules. However we can do to make things faster, I think we need to make things faster. I mean, we have special meetings all the time. We should have a special meeting and just get it done. I agree, we have to get something done.
I would like the city of Marquette to be known as a business-friendly city. In other words, working with the businesses, these small independent businesses, mom and pop stores on 3rd Street and elsewhere, I think it's important that we try to do things to help them. And stalling them, delaying them, to me, is not a way to help them. I would like to see this rushed through as best as possible. I think it's a priority. And I would say, if someone wants to put a sign in, do we have to fine them at this point? I would, in other words, let's break the rule and let them do it. Okay, we won't do that then. But that's what I would do. You know, I'm just, let's get this done. I mean, it's not their fault that it's, you know, as is. They're getting penalized because they can't proceed. I want them to have this, and I don't want it to be 2-3 months. So I'm going to leave it at 30 days and see what happens. That's my, well, that'll be my motion.
Is there a second to the motion? You have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, now we're back to any further discussion? Further discussion?
I'm going to be voting no on the motion because it doesn't.
Get her done.
Any other comments?
I'm voting no on the motion because it doesn't meet legal requirements.
That's exactly, Dave, as much as I want to move forward and support this, I'm not going to vote yes on a 30-day thing that we can't actually do. If you amended to 90, where the planning commission comes back to us in 90 days with a recommendation and we have that period, I would vote for the motion.
60.
I will amend the motion to make it 60 days. I will change the motion to 60 days.
Is there support for changing the motion?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Frazier with support. Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds.
Follow-up question. So 60 days, we're sending this to the planning commission, let's count tomorrow. They have to come back with us within 60 days with a proposal? Or is that also the timelines that have to be, because I think as Mr. Sackwitz was talking, I don't think that if the way you said our 2 meetings and we have to have that, I don't think that would count in the 60 days, at least is the way that the motion was worded. So I just want to make sure that would just be the 60 days the planning commission has the time to get back to us, and it doesn't count for our 2 meetings additionally. I think that's the case.
That would be my read on it. Is that your intention? We get the feedback. Recommendation back from the planning commission in 60 days. Then it's our deal to deal with it.
Thing is what?
Then at that point, we have to hold whatever hearings we have to hold based on our schedule.
Yes, that's fine. Just a thought. Can't they have a special meeting?
We can indeed.
They can.
They can.
So they could hurry this up, couldn't they?
They could. Commissioner Hill.
You do have to notice 15 days. That's public process. You can't just run through. I appreciate that we want to do this quickly, but the legal requirements are there's 15 days notice to a meeting. That 15 days is business days or calendar days? Can someone answer that question?
Calendar days.
Calendar days. So 15 calendar days. So I appreciate the effort, but 60 days is literally 15 times 60, so that would mean that we'd have to have everything noticed tomorrow. No?
No.
Okay, I don't understand that.
No, that's not correct. If you have 60 calendar days, I mean, the planning commission would essentially have 2 meetings, regular meetings, to be able to discuss this and work through it, or work sessions or whatever they have. And then a 2-meeting cycle of noticing a public hearing and actually holding the public hearing.
We have 4 meetings.
So if I can speak in favor of that, at very minimum, because you need that to set, it's process, man. It is what it is. I'm not trying to delay this from happening, but there's unfortunately a process that we have to follow in order to make sure that this is done properly. And, it's not just as easy as saying, you guys can replace that with something the same size or smaller. It's just not that easy, because there's other businesses now that have the opportunity to put up a new pole or change things. And as much as I'd like to push it through myself, 60 days is the very minimum. So.
60 days.
Motion made 60 days. Do we have a second to that motion?
Pete did.
We have a second. We have 2. Any further discussion? Frazier is seconding the motion. We've got Commissioner Smith. Further discussion?
Can I just get some information from city staff with 60 days? Are you comfortable with that? Thank you.
Further? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed by saying no? Hearing none, motion passes 7-0. That finishes our agenda items and brings us to the second public comment period. Public comments not to exceed 3 minutes per person. Please state your name and physical address when making those comments.
Matt Ludenberger, 1406 Garfield Ave, here in the city of Marquette. I felt obligated to come back because I didn't really tell you who or what or how in much detail for this Marquette Adventure Center Park. I guess that would be a profitable activity center in our city. So let me just go by saying these are the activities that I was told by local residents that they would like to use or experience and enjoy on local city property, and they have no problem paying you, the City of Marquette Parks and Recreation Department, a $5 pass or a $10 day pass or whatever it might be. Some of the activities are very similar to what was up at Moose Track. I already mentioned the putt-putt golf games, but you could do ropes courses. You could do an Ewok Village type of event. You could do moments where you have hot air balloons tethered to the actual site. You could easily put up 2 towers that have a ropes connecting the 2, and one of them have a water slide, the other one have a platform. You could have restaurants that are local restaurants. You could open up that parking space to the food trucks, and not have an actual physical restaurant there, but just food trucks. For the most part, there's a group out there called Aquatic Design Group, ADG. They also do mountain slides, and they do a bunch of other things. So in that sense, it's not me that would, if I tried to buy the property so I could do what Founders Landing did. By the way, I was here when Founders Landing put a check in front of the mayor and said, take it or leave it for Founders Landing. And that always frustrated me in their business practice. So when you talk about having a commission set up with only 2 other commissioners, Mr. Mayor, I saw Mr. Coyne basically tell the Minnesota group, I don't like you. And so I don't think you like me, and you might not take these ideas into consideration. I wish you would, because in the wintertime we could have sled dog courses. In the wintertime we could have a luge run on that same water course. In the wintertime we can have a bike, or a winter bike, snow bike path, central hub. A lot of the things that would be centralized in the north side of town, along the water, along this road that we still don't have enough money for, could be profitable. And I don't want to see that profit go to a private company. That's my point. A water park can be easily financed and easily functioned by current city staff. The lifeguards on the water could basically come over there and you put up signs saying swim at your own risk for 4 months out of the year. The thought is, please don't consider this a proposal by Matt Lutenberger, who you don't like. You've pointed that out many times. Put this as a profit margin for the city of Marquette. Please do something with Cliff Style that will bring in some cash flow. Thank you.
Frank Giaverto, these are my opinions. May 26th, after working on commission comments at the library computer, I got up to leave not realizing that a spent drug needle lay beneath my foot. I unknowingly rolled it onto the open floor. The syringe looked empty with the needle bent at a right angle. This is not the first or second time we found needles at our library. The director who was on hand turned the matter over to police. It's awkward to blame this board for needles at our library, similarly to the way I felt about ripping this board's pitiful performance at Flounders on a night that an excellent vote was taken on 2 piers. But I do partly blame this board for the needles, because this is the kind of eventuality I've tried futilely to warn this board of for 21 years, that all this glitz and money also draw the needles, meth, graffiti, and gangs right with it. This is evident in almost every town that's ever grown. Yet this board chooses to ignore the evidence in favor of the almighty dollar. Mr. Stonehouse correctly said that the piers will give us a new perspective and add to our shoreline. It's one of the few ways this board can replace at least some of what's been taken from us. Adding these piers, especially the wide one, will give us additional lakeshore and new views of our harbor. The woman who spoke out against the pier raised many good points, although she lacked the background information. A problem remains that Mr. Stonehouse neglects to respond to allegations that he lied to the Southside residents who spoke against 3-story buildings on Flounders Parcel 2. We now know that he told them what he needed to tell them to get himself through the moment, that there'd be plenty of time for public input. Honoring his promise was as simple as providing renderings so we'd have known what to comment on. He needs to learn that a lie told here on either side of the dais is a lie against all our citizens. This is also why we need to hire a manager, because he'd attend our meetings, hear the requests, and assure the needed information makes it into our packets. Despite requests for renderings by several unrelated residents, nothing was done. Mr. Stonehouse did nothing, the manager did nothing, 2 members who help assemble our agendas did nothing, and because no delay was granted to provide us drawings, all 7 members took ownership of this lie. Mr. Frazier had a point when he said, every mayor, every commissioner, they're all part of a long broken machine that chooses political correctness over the constituents who elected them, the people to whom this board is ultimately responsible. Mr. Stonehouse keeps answering in silence, hoping the impact of his lie will dissipate over time, but it will plague him through his last day in office. Remember, as Mr. Frazier keeps saying, my view is never blocked. Thus, I've never fought to protect my view or any view of my own, which makes more evident than ever that I'm here fighting to protect the views of 22,000 people and our visitors.
Anyone else to address the commission?
Dan Landers, 2808 Granite Point Drive. I just want to thank commissioners for the action you took tonight. We appreciate the step being taken to help these businesses. And what I also want to do is present 40-plus pictures of the businesses that are on 3rd Street and on Washington Street. Thank you.
Anyone else to address the commission? Seeing none? Well,
one more, and I'm
More.
Susie Swanson, 917 Cleveland, Apartment 5, and I just want to thank the commission for passing the proclamation for June Pride Month. It means a lot for people like me, but I think as far as the wider community too, we are a diverse community, and we all come together, and we have to learn to get along. We are in this together. Thank you.
thank you. Okay. That brings us to comments from commissioners. Commissioner Campana, we're going to start with you because you got this whole poll thing going.
Thank you. For the record, I'm calmed down. Though I don't appreciate people getting up and accusing my mayor and our commissioners of lying. We do not lie. We do our best up here. We're here to serve the city, and we're doing it because we want to make it a better place. We do not lie. Second of all, June 14th, this Friday, is Flag Day. Please get out and fly your flag. Be proud of your country. We have men and women who are dying to protect us. It's the least we can do. We got a lot accomplished tonight. We got some big deals here. Founders Landing is going to start moving forward. First time in forever that we have something going on down there besides a railroad yard. And the Presque Isle Marina, we're going to be moving forward with that. So it was a good meeting tonight, Your Honor. Thank you.
Great meeting as usual. We got a lot accomplished. I agree with Mr. Campana. We don't like people calling us liars because we're elected by the city. We do our best to fight what we can, but we're always so many people. We look at how fast we can get this done, how many things we can do. There's certain people that complain a lot, you know, from outside that don't have any knowledge of our live here as a citizen or anything. They live here as a citizen, but they're not from here. We take consulting for people that live here all the time they call it flounders instead of founders. Because founders are what helped Marquette be a place it is. You know, along with the Indian group, it helped Marquette to be a place what it is. It's a very important place, and nothing was taken away with us from Founders Landing. Before, when I was a kid in the 80s, it was a railroad yard. I used to walk down there all the time. I lived up across from Sheriff's Hills. I just walked down. So nothing was taken away from our Founders. In fact, Founders Landing has been an asset to the city. Has gained a lot for the city. We're getting a hotel now there, possibly for visitors. It'd be great for the city. People visiting the community will love it. And the view from the city has not changed. But yes, your view is blocked a little bit from the highway. But, I mean, so for 4 or 5 city blocks, your view's blocked. If you drive down through Founders Landing, your view would be fine. You could drive out to Presque Isle, your view would be fine. You could drive down by South Beach, your view is fine. There's lots of places in Marquette you can see the lake. You can see the lake coming all the way into Marquette through Harvey. There's lots of places and you can see the city of Marquette. You can see what wonders we have and what great place we have. As far as development, the city is not shy away from development. If somebody wants to give us a check for Clifftower property, we're happy to accept it if they want to do a development there. I think it has to be a development would be indoor. I mean, I'm in favor of doing an indoor arena, but it can't be outside because by Moose Tracks didn't last because it's such a short season. That's the problem with up here. We have snow, we have rain, and the area where Cliffstowe is, it faces the north, and as a boater my whole life, I know north winds, as everybody knows, north winds means chilly winds. Temperature drop. When I was a Presque Isle board, we wouldn't have a water park past at Presque Isle. We redid the playground. We looked into it, but we thought about it, well, Presque Isle Park can be up to 10 degrees colder than inland. So I know the board that's working on the playground for Lower Harbor. It's going to replace Madison Park. There's a company that emails us all the time that says, do like splash pads. And so we're looking at that, possibly a splash pad in Madison Park. Once Madison Park is completed, and then once Presque Isle gets their new playground, which is in writing, it's supposed to get a new playground eventually. When that's all done, we may look at adding the splash pad. It can be done because Madison Park is always warm. There's tons of buses there all the time. Late in the school year, there's buses and buses and buses. So it can be used a lot. Madison Park is a very warm area. It can be done. It should be done. It will be done sometime. And, I agree. A new development would be great there. If someone wants to do obstacle course inside, there's lots of companies out there that have indoor facilities. NMU has their dome, their climbing wall. All this stuff's great. I think it has to be indoors there because there's enough room for other stuff.
Thank you. And people would say, why are you running for a local city office? And it's because at the city level in Michigan, that's where we decide where we put stuff. So whether that put stuff is a sign or where we put our buildings, where we put our parks, tonight was a good example of the issues that come before us that deal with us, that we directly affect our day-to-day lives. And we have this process within our community to go through a decision-making process on deciding where to put things. And I think it's important to uphold that process and make sure as many people understand it as possible, so we can continue to come up with community decisions that evolve over time as things change. The other part of being a city commissioner is getting to celebrate our people. So we get to celebrate things like the hockey team today. That's actually our third hockey team we got to celebrate. Fourth,
yeah.
Yeah, fourth hockey team. We had 4 state champs this season in Marquette with different teen organizations. It's really exciting. And thank you to, again, UP Rainbow Pride for making this proclamation possible. And it was a partnership, and a partnership like coming together for the tennis courts, where folks raised money. We went and got a grant. We're improving facilities for the whole community. And then I have 2 upcoming events for people to be aware of. First is the League of Women Voters is having their annual meeting and a chance to learn about the new voting rules that we just passed for ourselves in Michigan. That's coming up day after tomorrow, Wednesday, June 12th, at the Ordock Brewing Company, upstairs in the community space from 6 to 8. So if you want to learn more about voting and how to, it's become much easier now, come on June 12th. And then coming up the last week of June is Art Week here in Marquette, and we're going to have a lot of fun things happening. Music on 3rd is going to start this next week on the Thursday. So yeah, enjoy this warm weather while we can. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
So 3 things. Tomorrow we have our capital improvement tour via bus and also a work session. So the work session is here, 6:30 at City Hall, room to be determined. 103 or here up in Chambers. Anyway, you'll find us if you're looking for us. 103 downstairs. So that's where we ride a bus all around the city of Marquette, look at the roads, and talk about the pipes underneath the roads for sewer, stormwater, and water. So that'll be interesting. Did it last year, but things always change, and budget got a little bit tighter with some other changes we've made this year. So it'll be interesting. Peter White Public Library is hosting an open house to display their renovations. That's Friday, June 21st from 1 to 3 p.m. Go check it out. And if you can't go then, just stop by anytime they're open. Especially the youth area is phenomenal. And finally, last week, the Public Works Department came out to my house to televise my sewer to make sure everything was going well, because we had some issues, but they're internal issues, but everything in our Orangeburg pipe is in tip-top shape. So thank you to the Public Works Department, and my Orangeburg is good. Perfect, actually. I don't know. We'll see how long that lasts. But anyway, kudos to that department for their efficient and friendly service.
Okay, making it quick tonight. First of all, school is out. Kids are going crazy. I've got one at home that is going to test me this summer, I've got a feeling, but I'm up for it. I'm up for it. Watch for the kids. Lots of extra traffic around the beaches, around the playgrounds. Ice cream stands. Doesn't matter. Just pay attention. Make sure that none of the kids get hurt out there this summer. Slow down a little bit. I'd like to thank I don't know if I can exactly say the city crews, but a couple months ago we sat. I would be driving along and my phone would go nuts, and of course I wasn't checking it because I was driving, but I was getting beat up by people talking about potholes and all of these things, how bad it was, and our streets are in shambles. And Public Works and the crews that have been working on that, whether it's filling some of the holes, but now more importantly, the resurfacing, the Lincoln Street's under construction, Wright Street's just got done. It's amazing. All of these areas that were really terrible. We all know that, but don't think that city staff and the people that are out there working every day, whether they're plowing or in the winter or shoveling asphalt to fill those potholes in the spring, don't pay attention to what's going on and have your back at any point in time, because they do, and they're trying their best to get out there and get those things back up to snuff. And I just want to commend everybody that's been working on that. I was at a recital week ago or so at Peter White Public Library. It was my first time in there since the remodel, and what a facility. Not only was it great to see the kids that were putting on their music concert, but the facility itself. What an amazing attribute that we have right there. Little access for all of the community to take advantage of. I just really think they did a fabulous job on the remodel, and it's great to see that up and running. I think that's pretty much it. But you know, get out and enjoy. And thanks for bringing up Flag Day. I got to get my flag out and ready for this weekend. So, thank you.
I feel like most of the commissioners have touched on everything, so the only two comments that I'm going to make is kind of what was touched upon that Commissioner Hill mentioned, is that it's really cool sometimes when we can do stuff for our citizens, like you bringing to our attention UP Pride and Pride Month, and to Dave to bringing up the pole signs. I read the emails and read the issues, and we came to some kind of fix at this moment. So just that was really nice to see this evening, to have two cool, totally different things at this meeting. So other than that, I don't have any other comments.
A couple of ones to finish up with. You know, the City Commission has many jobs and many responsibilities, but one of the big ones is to fix things when they break. And I think the pole sign issue on 3rd Street is broken. And the City Commission has a responsibility to fix that. And that's what we tried to do tonight. We've got the process working. We'll see what comes back. And hopefully it'll be better than what we have now and be able to take that step forward. I deeply regret we can't snap our fingers and fix it. It's going to take a little bit of time. But that's part of our job, is to fix things when they break. We are the final court of appeal, if you will, I guess, in terms of getting things done like that. Interesting comment was up, I thought, by the Planning Commission when they talked about the idea of a Marquette bus route. And that's going to become increasingly important to us as we transport people around, not only visitors to the community, but our own citizens, having bus routes that actually take people from where they are to where they want to go and bring them back. And I think we're getting some traction with that. We don't want to lose track of marijuana either, because we committed that we're moving forward on that ordinance, and we are. Right now, I think we're probably more in a standstill waiting for Lara, the License and Regulating Authority out of Lansing, to issue some more instructions. And as soon as that comes down, then we can take those and begin to formulate those into our ordinance. So we haven't lost track of that. Believe me, we're ready to go once we can get that data in our hands. So a little bit of patience until we get there. Lastly, I was in Traverse City last weekend. And a beautiful city, a lot of things going for it. But you know, you just can't find the water. And how true is that? When you're driving down 31 and you're 5 lanes of traffic and you're on the wrong side of the highway, and there's a little bit of stretch of free water you can come to on the water side, and you can't get there without playing Frogger. Remember that old video game? Well, that's kind of the way it is, isn't it? So when you think of Marquette, again, realize how much of our lakeshore we own in the public trust for everybody. A little bit maybe obscured by a building, but the other side of it isn't, and it's all open. And that certainly is what the commission has, as long as I can remember, always been working towards improving and getting more of. Nothing further. City Manager, your comments, please.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioners, for your support again tonight. We did get a lot done. And one comment or announcement that my office hours are this week, Wednesday, 10 o'clock a.m., Peter White Public Library, if the public would like to stop in. Thank you.
We're adjourned.